I was feeling really, really good, dancing, having fun, and we ran out of cocaine. So we pooled our money and I asked around, and somebody said, this guy's selling it. And he was a really kind of cagey, scrawny guy in a beige leisure suit. We started snorting it. It never occurred to me that wasn't cocaine. It just wasn't on my radar that it wasn't cocaine. And then, bam, it was like Popeye had punched me, and I was just shooting it straight up in the air. And then I realized I was rocketing out from Manhattan, and I had this huge sense of relief that I was leaving behind not just that nightclub and that kind of whatever bad situation had been happening there, but that whole nonsense of being Louisa. I was just so done with that effort. I'm Louisa Peck. I grew up in Seattle. My dad was a law professor. My mom's sort of an art historian. My dad was really, really atheist. For him, academia and freedom from the church were the same thing. So it was a very academic home, and it was a very performance-oriented home. We didn't get love just for being us. We had to do well, perform, make them proud. So I was very academic from the get-go, did really well in school. And I found I liked philosophy classes, and that's where I really got into proving there was no God. So, we'd read someone like Descartes, and he'd do the whole, I think, therefore I am, I have an idea of God, therefore. And I would just tear that argument. I just remember getting so into that paper to just I'm going to prove he's wrong. There's no God. That's ridiculous. I liked modernism because I felt in modernism, people were finally waking up from the dream of this Anglican church and finally facing the darkness, facing this indifferent, cold universe, which was really all there was and no point to life. I had to change schools many times. So by the time I got put in this private high school at 10th grade, they all had friends already, and I just made some what I call camouflage friends so that you're not sitting all by yourself. Finally, senior year, I discovered beer, and I just started finding out where parties were and going and getting wasted, and all of a sudden people liked me, and I liked me better when I was drunk. So I just kind of play acted this role as if I knew what I was doing and convinced them that that's who I was. But inside, I was like a very nervous actress, just what should I do now? How am I acting? How am I coming off? How's my performance? And it was such a weird way to live, but it was the only thing I knew. I graduated in 1982. Got to New York, and there was Studio 54. There was, I was just sort of trying to live the dream, except for I kept having panic attacks. So I would live the dream by staying drunk enough that I wouldn't have panic attacks. At a certain point, I asked a friend to come down to Manhattan and bring a lot of coke. And so he was a dealer back in college, and he came down, brought a lot of coke. We did a lot of coke in the apartment, and then we took a cab and went to the Peppermint Lounge. I was feeling really, really good, dancing, having fun, and we ran out of cocaine. My life, I was always trying to be cool enough, feel cool enough that I would feel okay. The next party, you're gonna finally feel cool. No, this next drink, you're gonna finally feel okay. No, you just need this just toke of pot, and that's the moment when everything is gonna change for you. And I felt I was just right on the cusp of that. I was almost at the point where I would be cool and feel okay, and now we're out of coke. And so we pooled our money, and I asked around, and somebody said, this guy's selling it. So we bought a gram from him. And he's like, it's good stuff, good stuff. And he was really kind of cagey, scrawny guy in a beige leisure suit. we started snorting it, and my friend, who was a dealer, was like, this is doing nothing. It's worthless. It's and he kind of just threw down his bill like, we've been had. And I thought, well, it numbed our gums. Maybe it's just bad cocaine, and if I do the whole pile, I'll get a little bit high. So I just snorted and snorted the whole pile. And then I shouted in his ear, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. And even on the way to the bathroom, I started seeing this interference of when you're gonna faint, there's like these little red speckles. And I was kind of like, whoa, this must be a cocaine side effect. This is so cool. And I waited in line in the bathroom. It got more and more and more. By the time I was in the stall, I could only see directly in front of me. And I realized I couldn't read any of the graffiti, any of it. And also couldn't get any breath of air. It felt like all the air was breathed up in that bathroom. So I got out of the bathroom and I'm breathing and I'm not getting anything. And I really did not know I was dying. I was upset that there was no air, and I was upset about this side effect, but it never occurred to me that wasn't cocaine. It just wasn't on my radar that it wasn't cocaine. Later, after I got sober and made friends in Alcoholics Anonymous, some of them were drug dealers, and several have told me we used to cut cocaine with lidocaine back in the 80s because the lidocaine was so much cheaper. But it sounds like you got sold pure lidocaine. And lidocaine poisoning, it's an anesthetic, usually used topically, but people sometimes commit suicide by just taking a tube of lidocaine that's 5% lidocaine and swallowing it, right? Mine was pure lidocaine. And so my heart was starting to slow down and getting down to 30 beats a minute, something like that. So no matter how much I breathed, my brain was not getting oxygen. I found my date and I told him there's no air in here, there's no air. And he's like, it's fine. And I was angry, like, why aren't you noticing that there's no air? He took me to the bar and the bartender gave me a glass of water. And I really did not want a glass of water. I wanted air, but I just took a sip. And then, bam, I thought that I had collapsed and hit my chin on the bar because I felt this blow. But no, it was like Popeye had punched me and I was just shooting it straight up in the air. And there was so much relief because I was no longer oxygen starved. I don't remember breathing or anything, but I had a sense of like, now there's all the air I could want. And then I realized I was rocketing out from Manhattan, and I had this huge sense of relief that I was leaving behind not just that nightclub and that kind of whatever bad situation had been happening there, but that whole nonsense of being Louisa. I was just so done with that effort. It was a perfect clear blue sky, and I sensed that the ocean was under me, perfect blue going all the way to the horizon. I made a decision that I was going to arch back and do a back bend dive, and then I could see the ocean below me, and I was diving toward it, and I thought, isn't it like concrete? Because I'm like 300 feet up. Isn't that like concrete when you hit it, But I didn't have any fear. I was just like, we'll see. And so then I dove straight down. And then I could see it was way up to the surface, but the surface was gorgeous from down there, and the bubbles were going up by me, and it was all so gorgeous. And I said, man, I wonder if I can make it to the surface okay. And then there I'm there. Then I looked and I saw a mesa that came up, and on top of it was this old weather-worn house. And I thought, that house has to do with me, and I gotta get there. Next thing I know, I've reached the house, but I'm at the door sill, and I'm like this high above it. I was just a subjective point of awareness, and I didn't have a body. And I crossed the threshold. Once I was over the threshold, then I knew this is the house of my ancestors, and they have all come this way through this house. And I could begin to feel my ancestors around me, grandparents, and I had a sense of a generation beyond that. And the strongest presence was my grandfather, who had died before I was born. They were all really excited to meet me, really happy that I was crossing over, ready to greet me, but I couldn't see them. I could just feel them. I didn't even hardly know who any of my ancestors were in my regular life. And people who are interested in genealogy or whatever, I was like, who cares about that? But here, I was just honored to be following in their footsteps, and with this feeling of it, we go through this house. And I had a sense of we, and it was all of the people who are connected to me. I knew there was supposed to be an armchair in this room that faced a big picture window that looked out at the ocean, and it wasn't there. And I just had a sense of that's no fair. Where's the chair? And I thought, how am I going to see the view? It's beautiful. I want to see it. As soon as I thought, I want to see it, something grabbed me by the sternum that I didn't have, but a sense of where your heart is, whether you have a body or not. It grabbed me by there. He pulled me across the floor, and we went up to the windowsill and over the windowsill. When we went over the windowsill, I just felt like, whoa, what is happening? But I was very delighted by it, right? And then next thing I know, the ocean's in front of me, the sun is directly in front of me, it's setting and it's making a path that comes toward me, and I zoom over that path. And I'm flying and I'm feeling all this forward motion, and it feels delicious. But then I had a skeptical thought, and it was like, wait a second. Perfect ideal surroundings, unbelievable beauty, fabulous sensation. Am I dreaming? People dream they're flying. Is this real? And then a voice answered me. And it was very kind of deep and clear and powerful. And it said, more real than anything back there. And I knew by back there, it meant in the Louisa business. And I also had not expected anyone to answer me. You wonder something, you certainly don't expect an answer. But I also had to kind of think in answer to that voice, that's true. This is more real than anything back there. So, sun started getting bigger and bigger as I got closer, and I began to even be able to see some of the patterns on the sun, and I thought, am I going to vaporize? I'm getting so close, but again, with no fear. And then instead of vaporizing, I sort of hit it, passed through this filament, and I was in the light. And it was everywhere, and I felt that it was so brilliant that all you could see was light, but I could also feel that it was in me somehow. It was light from the inside as well as from the outside, warmth from the inside, and I began to understand that it was love. I felt this sense of finally, because all my life had been jump for the cookie, try, and maybe you'll get a little crumb of love, And here I was just completely engulfed by love, completely saturated with love. And then I began to become aware that I was being cradled like an infant by some being. And in my mind's eye, the being was sitting on the ground, sort of in the way that Buddha figures sit, but holding me and just pouring, you are so loved, you are so loved. And the thing that was most is that it was, you are so loved. Not like, here's the love show we do for everybody when they come into the light. More like, I know you better than you even know yourself, and I adore you. And that feeling, I had everything I could possibly want. And I just wanted to stay there forever. I can't say how much time passed, whether it was a minute or what, but then the parent just said, you can't stay, you're not done, and went to blackness. I was baffled. I was absolutely baffled. What do you mean I can't stay? What do you mean I'm not done? So I screamed, no, with like everything in me, no. And I had the thought, like, if you remember being a little kid and thinking like, I'm gonna just throw the biggest tantrum and I'm gonna just like show them that they can't do this. That's how I felt. I wanted to kick. I remember thinking, I wish I could kick them in the shins. But then it just went to black instantly. So I had no recourse. In the blackness, I also had a sense of dropping. And when I felt the dropping, that's the first time I felt scared. To drop felt frightening, and I didn't know how far I was going to drop or what was going to happen. I began to see these little stick figures, and they were like chalk drawings on the background. One of the stick figures started getting closer, and somehow his circular head filled in like a dinner plate, and he's going, "How many fingers? What is your name?" Then I gradually realized he's talking to me, and then I remembered the world. When I came back to reality, all the stick figures turned into all the people in the crowd around us, right? And he was the bartender, of course. And I had just come alive again. It was the hugest bummer. I remembered I am back in the meat puppet. Everything is manual now. Everything is back to this stupid memory I have of how things worked. It was more like, you gotta be kidding. I'm not going back to this song and dance. No way. So I was lying on the ground, and there were people all around, as many as I could see, all the people, and I didn't quite understand why, and there was a whole lot of water around me. I thought that they had, like in the movies or whatever, thrown water on me to revive me, but it was actually sweat had just poured out of me when I became animate again. The bartender had been doing CPR on me the whole time. It was about 3 minutes. I had, from the time I took the sip, flipped backward, but into a grand mal seizure. And I had banged all around having a grand mal seizure and then cardiac arrest. And so the bartender started the CPR. He kept up with the CPR. No, CPR is not working. CPR is not working. And I turned gray, and my date says that it was so long to him that it wasn't working, and I turned so gray and looked like a corpse and nothing like myself that he had actually just told the bartender, she's gone. Just cover her up, give it up, she's gone. But he didn't. And it's so hard to say. I never thanked him. So we all went up the stairs together, and I'm like, why are we going up the stairs? Okay, let's go up the stairs. And we sat outside, and it was in Greenwich Village, so we were sitting on this bench with our backs to the wall, and the bartender came over to talk first to my buddy, or my date, and then he turned to me, and he said, you were gone a long time. We kind of thought you weren't coming back. And in my 22-year-old mind, I put together that he'd been doing CPR with his mouth on my mouth, and this is what I thought. Ew. He's like, gotta be 30. That's so gross. I'm so embarrassed. So I'm just gonna go like, yeah, hey, yeah, that's great. That's what I did. And I was smoking my cigarettes, and it was just horrifying to me. Many years later, I just realized he had given me everything that I have. All the experience I've had, my son, I was only 22. I mean, I hadn't done anything, and he gave me my life back, and I was too busy being cool to acknowledge what would have happened. All of a sudden, I put together that the ambulance was for me, and that it meant I was going to go to the hospital, and that meant my parents were going to find out that I had done cocaine and had a cardiac arrest, and that was not something my parents would approve of. So I just said to my date, please, don't make me go to the hospital, please. So he just grabbed my hand, and we just ran to the nearest taxi right there, and we jumped in, and I remember him saying, drive, just drive. In the morning, I remember having bruises all over back of my head was all lumpy, but most of all my sternum from the CPR. And I talked to my roommate about what had happened, and she said, "So do you think that parent thing that you said was holding you, was that like God?" And I knew it was, but I just couldn't go there. I thought, if this is true, and if I went somewhere and that was pretty close to God filling me with love, and I can remember people saying God is love and stuff like that, that means the church people are right. And that means I'll have to go to church. And I just kind of had this image of me going to church, holding the Bible, talking with other kind of dowdy, goody girls, when like Studio 54 and Columbus Ave and all these things are right there, and I've got my high heels and my miniskirts. No, I'm going this way. I'm not gonna turn into some goody Christian girl. And that was kind of the decision I was making, because I could not undo who I was. It really had more to do with, this is me, this is what I believe, and if I acknowledge this is real, I have to start over from scratch, and I'm just not gonna do that. So I told some people about the story as if it were a very cool hallucination, and then I just kind of put it away and tried not to think about it. But none of the memories were fading. If I thought about it, I could go back to flying over the ocean and him saying, "More real than anything back there," and I could feel it again. But I just wanted it to be a hallucination so bad that I thought, okay, so for some reason I overdosed on coke and I had a cardiac arrest. So maybe as my brain got starved for oxygen, it kind of went down to one little signal at the very end, and that little spark of a signal seemed really big. It was just love is what's the last spark to go out in a brain. And I must have experienced that. So it was just a brain phenomenon, and I can put this aside and go on living the way I've been living. Years passed with nothing weird happening, and the story was just kind of a story. My alcoholism has gotten worse and worse and worse. I left a teaching job because it got in the way of my writing, but it actually got in the way of my drinking, and I bought a log cabin way out in unincorporated Thurston County, and I got a job as a barista, and I would party with all the barista kids. So I was 34, and they were in their 20s, but I had not grown up. I had no new game plan for my life. So I went to a party. I got so drunk they took my keys away and put me in a stranger's house, but I found my keys, I found my car, and I drove home completely shit-faced. I came to a place where the road narrowed to go over railroad tracks. For me, it was just like kind of a sea of I don't know how many reflective signs. Well, I just thought, I don't care what happens, 80 miles an hour, and I just shoot for the middle, and I made it through. And I got to my log house. I got out of the car, and I remember kind of holding myself up with the door, and it was a starry night, and I just thought, man, I am such a badass when I drive drunk. And right after I had that thought, something seemed to shoot from the stars and through me and out my feet like lightning. And it was a knowing, and it said, "This is the last time I can help you, and you do know right from wrong." So backwards drunk messed up me goes, what was that? And I felt a sense of guilt because I did know what I had done was wrong at some level, and I did know I knew better. And I tried to shake it off, but it had this intoning of truth somewhere in my core, and that resonance just wouldn't stop. So I still went drinking, and I just kept hearing, "You do know right from wrong, and that's the last time I would help you." Someone's been helping me all this time, which I didn't know, but I sort of knew. So it took me another month before I went to my first AA meeting, but I did go, and that was January 29th, 1995, and I've not had a drink since. I am a completely different person now than I was at the time when I had the NDE, which is 40 years ago. So part of it is aging, but I actually think if I had aged with no direction, I'd be a bar hag somewhere. And then a lot of it is AA, because I learned a lot from listening to the old timers and so on, and just being in meetings. But there's also this component of knowing, not thinking that God is real. I think it's important not to segregate God as separate from anything else. God is a nexus of intelligence and love, which are actually the same thing, but it's in everything. So in the trees that made this chair was God. God is the energy that is everywhere. It is not useful to personify God as some dude in the sky, and it is not useful to say, well, God's the boss and then these angels are at a low. They're all the same, but I feel like my angel is a conduit for God, and then I can also be a conduit for God. And that I can always come back to as a touchstone, that my job is to leave each person I encounter a little happier than they were. And I take this in everything I do. I work one-on-one with people in my work, but I always take the time to talk to them and ask and get somehow a laughter, a human moment in our work. And people that I pass on the street, sometimes I'm in the airport and I'll get overwhelmed and I'll just say to him, I can't smile at everybody. But I feel like each person that I exchange that little spark with, if it's positive, if there's a moment of seeing we're both human and I'm saying good wishes towards you, I'm doing my job. It's hard being human. It's hard being incarnated in the meat puppet and burping stuff back and forth to each other and signals. It's just difficult. I also feel there are dark energies in the world, and that hate foments more hate. And free will is a big deal. We can destroy the world by choosing hate. We do know right from wrong. And I could have smashed my brains open on a tree or a telephone pole. That's what he was saying. You're free to do that, to destroy yourself if you want. But you do know right from wrong, and you can move forward. Same thing as a whole human race. We have these horrible hate makes hate conflicts going on in the world, but we deeper down know that love is what we're going for. So God wants us to find the path to love. I think that Martin Luther King nailed it when he said, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And our survival-based limbic system tells us, no, hit them harder than they hit you, But Jesus was trying to say, give them your coat too. It's trying to say, turn it around and find a way to love. And that's what Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, all these people who've changed the world, did it by saying, no, you don't hit back. You love back so that the other person sees they were wrong to hit you.
The potential that Trump won't make it to the inauguration either. And I don't wish any harm on anyone. I just want for the most benevolent best. But that's what I was told in guidance. And it just, I'm just sharing psychic awareness that I was given. And we'll see. We always get to see how that plays out.
My name is Lori Ann Spagna, and I've been working for over 20 years in the spiritual development, personal development, self-help, self-growth, spiritual growth arena for, over 20 years. I work with high achievers, high-achieving visionaries, highly ambitious visionaries who know that they want to make a global contribution or a big, huge contribution in the world. So I help people to access their superhuman abilities, their extrasensory gifts, their extrasensory talents, their ability to work with energy and various states of consciousness, their intuition. And I also help people to work with their mindset and their energy, their emotional body and their energy field, so that they can make the impact that they came here to make. So I've been doing that for over 20 years. I'm a multidimensional channel, which means I tap into the non-physical realms, the higher multidimensional realms, to access information and energy that's typically not available to us in the physical earthly realm. Yeah, when you start using your third eye, and the third eye area, this is just a chakra center like all the others, right? And even though Western medicine or traditional mainstream medicine might not fully recognize the third eye, or they might not call it chakra centers, they do know this is a major energy center that connects to the brain, right? And this is a major energy center that connects all this area of the body. And this is a major energy center that connects, lungs and heart and chest and upper arms and upper back. And then your belly area is a major energy center that connects to all the internal organs in that area. And then the reproductive center, that's a major energy center that connects to all of our reproductive organs and our reproductive center. And then the base at the buttocks of the spine, which is called the root chakra, that connects right to that area of the body. So science knows they're real energy centers, but we call them chakras. Either way, potato, potato. And for most people, those are blocked. But we have the ability to access and awaken them, just like we might floss our teeth to clear away blockage. It's the same concept. Once it's clear, especially the third eye area, what we can start doing is start using our extra sensory abilities, such as our clairvoyance, our ability to see with our mind. So it's beyond just the physical eyesight. We can see with our mind all kinds of light and color and images and symbols. And as we learn to determine or to discern what that means, we start understanding the messages. We can also hear sounds silently with our mind, because that's clairaudience, also linked to this pineal gland, this third eye area, and the pituitary gland. We can also smell and taste extrasensorily. So you can and a really great example is if you right now let yourself, you can smell a rose, even if a rose isn't in the room right now, right? You can smell a rose. And some people, or you can smell coffee, right? You can allow your mind to taste. For example, you could taste ice cream, right? Or you could taste coffee. And you can do that with your mind. Now, that's all some of the clairs. Clairaudience, claircognizance is another one. You can get information just given to you. Do I receive messages about humanity in the future? Yes, because right now, so I have a team called the Collective of beings that I'm part of that collective, and they're in the non-physical, and they're loved ones and masters, ascended masters and guides and teachers, and they share all kinds of information about what's going on Earth and what we can expect. And one of the things that they're sharing very often is that there is what we can call an agenda of the light. And what that means is that God or source, creator, the infinite, the divine, spirit, however you identify with that source, it has a plan for us. And that plan is the agenda of the light. It's the plan for us humans and animals and Mother Earth as part of lighted creation, meaning as part of all of creation. All right, let's talk about next year, which is 2025. We're moving into what's called, I'll say this from numerology, next year is the vibration of a 9 year. 9, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5. That's 9. And the frequency of 9 correlates to massive transformation. Also in the Chinese astrology, it correlates to the year of the snake, and particularly the wood snake. What this means for humanity, the year ahead, is that we're going to see exponential transformation and massive spiritual growth
for people, but like across the planet, because that correlates not only to the 9, but also to the year of the wood snake. Huge amounts of very accelerated spiritual awakening for people. And that means more and more people are going to start not only activating their pineal and their pituitary, awakening their extrasensory gifts, opening their chakras. They're going to be learning how to use energy. More and more people are going to become more and more sensitive, because we are becoming more sensitive. We're getting out of our brains. We're still going to use our brains, just not the same way. And more of our heart brain, because we know that there's brain matter in the heart. We know that already scientifically. Massive spiritual growth and accelerated consciousness evolution, and extreme progress in terms of understanding energy. Next year, we will also continue to see more breakdowns of institutions like governments, false authorities, you really want to know what's going, a lot more conspiracy. What used to be called, what used to be called conspiracy is more and more becoming, evident, clear. So more of that's getting exposed. And while it's not all pleasant, it is coming out from the shadows so that people can be freed and liberated. In the years ahead, there will be more and more freedom for those who are choosing it, because you'll start to realize these systems and structures, whether it's the educational systems, the financial systems, the food and water industry, big pharmaceutical industry, medical industry, educational systems, money and financial systems, people will start to see all of those systems, all of them, have been set up to serve a few, to the harm and detriment of the many. So it's not conspiracy theory. It's literally just becoming aware of what we didn't realize. And as we start becoming aware of that, we'll start saying more and more, this is not serving us anymore. We need to improve this. And you'll see this in a very heightened way next year, more and more. If you're not already seeing it, it's already started, intensified next year, and more people will start saying, I want to be part of the solution. How do I be a part of the solution? How do I make a difference? Because we'll realize these old systems don't work. They're not serving us. And in order for us to make the changes, it's going to have to come from us, from within us. So more and more people will step forward wanting to make a difference, wanting to be contributing and being service-oriented. And more people will become more consciously aware that in order to make the changes that we need ahead for our whole planet, whether it's financial, whether it's medical, whether it's medical or health-wise, whether it's educational, whether it's food, whether it's industrial in terms of land and how we use the land, whatever it is, people will start to realize that the way we're going to find the solutions is through connecting with our source, Creator God, to find the solutions that are available to us that we need, because they won't come from those old systems. Those old systems will continue to collapse, right? Okay, so will the systems collapse in the future? They are collapsing already, but for most people, they don't necessarily quite see it. But if you're becoming aware, if you start seeing like the corruption, the greed, the extreme greed, the way we treat one another. Another system that you'll see is going to change in the coming years is and this is maybe more in the United States, but overall, human rights overall are going to become an issue. Human rights. And especially in underdeveloped countries, it's already starting. So when I say the systems are going to collapse, it's not overnight. It's already starting as people become more and more aware of how these systems aren't serving us, and that awareness raises. At the same time, people will start stepping forward to make change. But human rights will become more of an issue with the goal of restoring equanimity and fairness over time. Animal rights, rights of the earth, taking care of the earth, all of these things will become more and more obvious to us. So when I say systems are going to collapse, it's already started. Okay, so the elections of the US this year, I know that's a hot topic. So first I want to say, over 4 years ago, Actually, let me go back even 8 years ago. And since we're talking about the United States elections, before Trump got in office, and every year I do a predictions call. I just ask guidance, what's going to be happening. So before Trump got in office, I asked guidance, and I was told, yes, Trump would be the next president. And then before the elections that we have where we have the current president, I asked again, and I was told that he would win, that Trump would not be elected, and that he would not finish out his full term, and that Kamala Harris would get in. And that's kind of happening now. I mean, technically, he's still the president, but we can sort of see he's been withdrawing. And it's very possible that Kamala Harris could be the first president, even if she's never elected into office. That means she would end up getting put in as president even before January, before the inauguration of the next president. But that she would not be in there. I've already been told this, she won't be in there long, even if she is officially the first president, because chances are, and this is, you don't have to agree. This is just what I was told, right? I'm not trying to, it's not even a political statement, because my desire is just for the most benevolent, best for humanity. That's how I vote. I just want who is for the best in service for the greatest good of humanity, and I never really care who is that person. I just care that that's the person who gets in. But what I was told was that Kamala Harris, in her heart of hearts, doesn't really want this, and that in a sense she's kind of like a little bit of a puppet, just doing what she's told, and she got into that position almost in a way that it's not necessarily her highest joy, and that in truth it's probably more. She's not necessarily got the strength that it would be needed for that office, and that she would not last for very long. And so even if she did win, I was told, because it's always up to human consciousness, but at the same time you got to understand, elections and presidential positions, they're chosen way before. They're cultivated and chosen by these global elite offices. So she's the one who's slated to win. She's the one who's slated to win. But I don't see her staying in there. It's more likely, energetically, that, believe it or not, Trump's VP, who is Vance, will become the next real president. But it's after a lot of mayhem. So there'll be fights again over who won, who stole it, who didn't stole it, whether it was rigged or not rigged, whether they counted all the ballots. You're going to see all that drama unfold again, and there'll likely be the potential that Trump won't make it to the inauguration either. And I don't wish any harm on anyone. I just want for the most benevolent best. But that's what I was told in guidance, and it just, I'm just sharing psychic awareness that I was given, and we'll see. We always get to see how that plays out. So the future for humanity is where we're starting to realize the cause and effect of the way we've been thinking and behaving and acting and feeling, that cause and effect has created and contributed to experiences that we no longer desire. And that as we make this change in the way we think, in what we believe, in what we perceive, in what we give our energy to, in how we feel and how we emote, we can make shifts into changing for the better ourselves and one another, so that we start having this and living in this new paradigm where there is so much more peace and harmony and benevolence for all, prosperity and abundance for all. It's happening slowly. It's hard to see, but it is ahead. Now, in the short term, it's turbulent. There's turbulence right now, because the turbulence is that the old ways of living aren't working. We're seeing systems falling apart. We're seeing, governments and corporations and the schooling systems aren't helping anymore. And, insurance companies, we're starting to see are frauds. And sometimes, big pharma is not really helping, or, we're seeing the systems that aren't really serving us in the best ways. Food systems, etc. And we're starting to have to make new choices about all of it, so that we can make those changes. So the turbulence is only temporary. The other thing that's really important to understand about the future for Earth is that Mother Earth, who is a conscious being, we don't always think of a planet as a conscious being, but she's a conscious being. And in a sense, she has chosen, she's saying, I no longer want my body, my earthly body, to be poisoned and to be trashed and polluted, and my waters to be polluted and my animals to be treated poorly. I want people and myself to become more loved and loving so that I can heal, so that I can restore my natural nature and trees, and animals get homes again and are treated as sentient beings, and humans are treated better. So we don't always think of her as a conscious free will being, but she's choosing to. And so she's going through a change. And this is part of why we're seeing big weather changes, big like tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, mudslides, droughts. A lot of that is because Mother Earth is showing us and saying, this is not going to continue. This old way where you're not respecting the land, where you're not respecting the animals, where you're not respecting me, meaning Mother Earth, that has to change. And anywhere where that's not in harmony, that's why weather patterns sometimes come in. We don't always realize that, but a weather pattern like a tornado can come and say, hey, clean this up. Or a hurricane can say, I need to get rid of this. A tornado can do that too. Or a tsunami can say, clean this up. Let's bring and restore healthy balance. Let's teach humans, Mother Earth and nature can be saying, let's teach humans how to be compassionate and caring to one another and to help one another. So a lot of times that's part of the agenda of the light, to help us to become more compassionate and caring and service-oriented to one another. And that's part of Mother Earth's healing journey too. When we're talking about the wars on planet Earth, here's what's going on. In a sense, we have leaders and authorities in positions of leadership and authority, presidents and, different leaders in the political arena who are more interested in the financial gain and the power and control. And they do not value the lives of their citizens. So they're creating war situations for power and control and domination and financial gain, because there's financial gain that comes out of wars from all the war-making machines, etc. So humanity is actually the ones who are in control, even though it seems that these false leaders and authorities are in control. Why? Because as humanity starts to awaken and chooses peace and starts to recognize that peace is an energy that we can create from within, and starts to actively engage in being peaceful and choosing harmony, being harmonious, then the energy of war and fighting can no longer survive on the planet, right? So this is the trajectory for humanity. We're meant to start to reclaim the inner peace and the inner harmony, which would make war impossible to continue. However, it's quite possible that that won't happen within the next year to 3 years, potentially, or even more. So it's a matter of at what point will humanity decide they're done and they're just going to be peaceful? Because it's the energy, everything's energy. It's the energy of peace and harmony that counteracts the energy of war. And it's up to us to start working with energy to reclaim our ability to make that change. Now, to be more specific, when I ask, what I'm told is that the propensity for war is increasing because the turbulence of unresolved conflict within humans is coming up to the surface to be resolved. And as that happens, it pushes up people's unresolved emotional trauma. So when people have unresolved emotional trauma and they don't know how to handle their emotional trauma, it gets erupted, and the energy of it creates and contributes to the energy of war. I hope this makes sense. I hope you can see how this is all connected. So as humans start to resolve our inner trauma, and that will happen in the coming years, we'll start to have more stability. That said, what I was told even today by my own team from the non-physical is that we just reached what's called a new octave. And when we reach a new octave, that means we're, as a collective, vibrating higher. And as we vibrate higher, the likelihood of war decreases. So this is very good for humanity, and that we'll see this in the coming year. But still, there will be opportunities in various countries like Iraq, Iran, etc., where, Russia, etc., that they still need to resolve those turbulent issues. There's one other piece that wants to come through. Hold on. There's one other important piece about this, which is that the potential for war is increasing, but what's most important that humans don't know, okay, this is coming from my own team, what's most important that humans don't know is that nuclear types of war, while we're always threatened with that by the leaders, in truth, the benevolent star family races have deactivated those. So that's really not a threat. The kind of war that is more of a threat is global germ warfare, such as a type of virus, for example. That's a different kind of war. So it's unspoken, or the potential for a vibrational war. So for example, if there's satellites all over the sky, all over the earth, satellites now, and if those satellites are radiating out to towers on the earth, for example, that are picking up the energy of those satellites, if they're radiating out things that are interfering with us, such as interfering with our brainwave activity, making us depressed or anxiety, full of anxiety or panic or terror or fear or frustration, that stuff is affecting us and we don't even know it. That's a type of warfare if it's being done on the general masses. Is it? Possibly. Is it likely? It's already happening if you're willing to admit that. So the kind of war, when you ask about war, will change. And it becomes a kind of a war over what do you know? What do you know, and who is your source? Who do you listen to? Who do you give your consent and authority to? Do you believe what false leaders and false authorities are telling you, or are you willing to go to your source, to remember and reclaim that peace, that love, that harmony, that truth that you have always available to you, that will allow you to have a stable foundation? Because everything's energy and consciousness. So as you learn to access that, which people will be, you'll realize that the other opportunities that are presenting in terms of the global stage, you don't have to plug into them. You don't have to play with them. Yeah, so in a sense, Mother Earth is going through a purification. And in a sense, what she's saying is, I want my children, this is what she said in channeled information, right? When she's communicating and I'm picking up her information and translating it, she's saying, I know every footprint who walks on my body, meaning her earthly body. She knows all of us. She knows each and every one of us as her children, as part of her. And that includes the animals too. And she says, she is going through a purification and she's healing, but it's kind of like she's going, she's not saying we have to leave. She's saying we have to change. We have to change the way we're doing things, the way we're living. We have to be more environmentally caring, honoring of the environment, the waters and all of nature, the air, the skies, etc., and the animals who live here, because that's part of her healing journey. As we become more caring, more compassionate, more respectful, more honoring, that's part of the healing journey. So she's asking for that. And she's showing us how important it is for us to make those changes, because when we don't make those changes, we end up suffering greater because she's like, look, this isn't working anymore, and you have to choose one way or the other, and I'm going to show you how the old ways aren't working so that I can help you to make the changes with me. That's what's happening. So it is a purification process, and at the same time we are completely invited and welcome to continue to stay on earth and to be here. It just requires us to make some changes from within. What we can do in the future, one of the things that we're going to start seeing more and more with the earth changes that we're starting to see, the weather pattern changes, we're going to have a period of time, and again, this is all channeled information from beings who serve the light, who come through and they share and they teach this, that we're going to have a period of time within the next 10 years where the whole earth will go through what's called kind of like what we could call a null zone, a period of time where there may be a solar flash of some kind where most of our technology gets knocked out, and we just have to help one another to restore ourselves. And that's part of our recovery, so that we're no longer living as, we no longer will be required to live as what I call a slave race. Right now, we're like a slave race because in order for us to survive and thrive, we have to work, we have to make money, we have to, kill other animals to eat and, do all kinds of things that aren't really true to our most benevolent best and our organic nature. So we're meant to shift out of that and shift into a reality where we just are doing only what we love so that we can be of service, so that we'll just do what we love to be of service and contribution in the world. And as we are of service and contribution, it's coming through joy, and it's more of the divine offering its gifts through us, right? Which is why more and more people are starting to develop their capacity to be more spiritual and to offer more spiritual gifts, spiritual truth, channeling, guidance, etc. So when we go through this period of time within the next 15 years, where there's like a null zone, possibly a solar flash, it's because what's happening is Earth and the entire solar system right now, the entire galaxy and solar system, because Earth, we are revolving around the sun, right? And all the planets that are in our Milky Way galaxy are revolving around the sun. We're moving out of the quadrant where we've been, right? Maybe science doesn't know this, but this is why consciousness can really teach us so much. And as we're moving, that's part of what's affecting these massive Earth changes. But as we do move, we're going to be reuniting in the galaxy with other, we could call them star family races, other planetary bodies that we didn't even know existed, and that potentially, very likely, will include meeting up with beings from other planets who we could call star family races. Once that the sun and the solar system moves through a certain point in the galaxy, we'll have what's called a kind of solar flash. It's nothing to be afraid of. It just means we're going to have to learn how to help one another and take care of one another. And that's starting now. We're seeing the very earliest signs of it now. But on the other side of it, we'll start shifting into just doing work that's joyful to us, that's inspiring to us. And then people won't feel like, we'll start moving into more equanimity, right? Equanimity for humanity. So right now we're not in equanimity. We're in mostly like oligarchy, patriarchy, there's tyranny, top down, right? Top down, where, a few people at the very top who are, you could say, rich global elites control everything, and the masses are struggling, right? As we make this shift in the coming years, and this will take a while, but we'll start moving into more equanimity, which is fairness, equality, reciprocity. And it's, again, we're the ones making the change from within. Yeah, I love to hear from people. They can definitely connect with me through my website. It's my name, Lori, Lorispagna, lorispagna.com. I also have a podcast. It's called The Awakened Elevated Human.